What if the Earth just stopped spinning? Imagine waking up tomorrow and suddenly the sun isn't rising in the east. Days and nights would stretch to months. Winds would roar at hundreds of miles per hour, tearing through cities. Oceans would surge, swallowing coastlines as water rushes toward the poles. Gravity itself wouldn't change, but everything we know about weather, time, and life would collapse. You'd feel the Earth's surface jolt beneath your feet as inertia throws objects and people sideways. Temperatures would swing violently, scorching half the planet under constant sunlight, while the other half freezes in endless night. Animals wouldn't know where to go, crops would wither, and the sky itself would look different, with stars and clouds frozen in unfamiliar patterns. Humans would scramble for shelter, food, and water, but even the best prepared wouldn't survive easily. It's a terrifying idea, yet strangely fascinating. Stick with me until the end, because the reality of a stopped Earth isn't just extreme weather or chaos. The outcome might be even more surprising and more permanent than you think. I'm Harris, and you're watching What If Harris, where we explore human survival in extreme scenarios. Today, we're imagining what would happen if our planet suddenly stopped rotating. It's a scenario that seems impossible, but it helps us understand how delicate life really is. From violent winds to eternal day and night, we'll explore how humans would react, what strategies might give us a chance, and the ultimate fate of our civilization. Let's dive in. Imagine the Earth suddenly stopping its spin. Right now, our planet rotates at roughly 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, carrying oceans, air, and everything on its surface along with it. If that motion vanished instantly, the results would be catastrophic. The atmosphere would still be moving at the original speed, whipping winds across the surface at hundreds of miles per hour. Buildings, trees, even people would be thrown sideways, and oceans would surge violently toward the poles, flooding land that's usually safe. Normally, life survives because the Earth's rotation creates a balance. The spin generates the Coriolis effect, which shapes winds, currents, and weather patterns. Without it, storms would behave differently. Air circulation would collapse, and the climate would swing to extremes. One half of the planet would be scorched by constant sunlight, while the other half freezes in endless darkness. Temperatures could swing by tens of degrees within hours, making it almost impossible for humans to grow crops or find reliable water. Gravity itself wouldn't change, but the shape of the planet would. Right now, Earth is slightly flattened at the poles because of its rotation. Without spin, water would redistribute toward the poles, creating massive new coastlines and leaving former equatorial regions almost dry. Entire ecosystems would collapse and food chains would break down. Humans rely on predictable days, seasons, and weather. Remove all of that, and survival becomes a daily struggle against heat, cold, storms, and flooding. Even the simplest things we take for granted, sleep cycles, plant growth, rainfall, would vanish. People would have to abandon cities, seek shelter in extreme climates, and find new ways to secure food and water. Most survival plans we have today depend on a world that spins, with predictable days and nights. Suddenly, that safety net disappears, leaving chaos in its wake. In this new reality, the laws of physics alone make human survival extremely difficult, and every moment would become a fight to simply stay alive. If the Earth suddenly stopped rotating, the first moments would be pure chaos. Imagine standing outside as the ground beneath you jerks to a halt. Your body, used to the steady spin of the planet, would be thrown sideways, as if invisible hands were slamming you off balance. Winds at hundreds of miles per hour would rip past, tearing off roofs, bending trees, and tossing debris like it weighs nothing. For anyone outside, survival in the first hour would be almost impossible. Inside buildings, the situation would be no better. Windows would shatter, and even sturdy walls might collapse under the pressure of the moving air. People's lungs would struggle against the sudden change in pressure. Breathing would feel heavy, almost like trying to inhale underwater. Your heart would race, pumping faster as adrenaline floods your system. Blood would surge toward your head with every sudden shift, making vision blur and balance nearly impossible. Even those who managed to stay upright would feel disoriented, as the inner ear relies on constant movement and gravity cues to keep the body stable. As hours pass, the environment itself would transform into something unrecognizable. The side of the planet facing the sun would start heating rapidly. Without rotation, sunlight would beat down constantly in one place, raising temperatures to levels where skin burns in minutes and water evaporates faster than rivers and lakes can replenish. On the dark side, temperatures would plummet, skin would crack, frostbite would set in within hours, and the air itself would feel thin and biting. Breathing becomes a struggle as cold air holds less moisture and oxygen, while the body's internal temperature regulation fights to keep the core alive. Atmospheric pressure would shift dramatically. Winds would slow, but then reorganize into new patterns, carrying dust, smoke, and debris over continents. The oceans, no longer held at the equator by centrifugal force, would surge toward the poles. Coastlines would disappear, and coastal cities would vanish underwater. People inland might avoid the initial flooding, but rivers and lakes would overflow, creating sudden inland tsunamis. Water scarcity would become immediate and severe, forcing survivors to scavenge or risk drinking contaminated sources. In terms of daily survival, the human brain would be under constant stress. The day-wake cycle, regulated by day and night, would break down. Endless sunlight or darkness would confuse our circadian rhythm, causing fatigue, irritability, and eventually hallucinations. Hunger and thirst would intensify the mental strain. People would fight to find shelter, food, and clean water while constantly dodging extreme weather events. Emotional panic would rise as social order collapses. Communities might splinter, with chaos spreading faster than organized help. Over days and weeks, the human body would continue to suffer from slow, relentless changes. Skin would dry and crack under extreme heat, or frostbite and hypothermia would set in on the cold side. Blood circulation would become erratic, with some organs overworked and others deprived. The immune system would weaken from stress and exposure, making infections far more deadly. Lungs would constantly battle shifting air pressure and dust-laden winds. Eyes would burn from relentless sunlight or go numb from cold and darkness. Even the simplest movements would feel dangerous as the terrain itself changes with flooding and collapsing structures. Despite all efforts to survive, long-term survival would be nearly impossible for most. Humans could find temporary shelters in caves, underground bunkers, or makeshift buildings, but food, water, and medical supplies would quickly dwindle. Societies might fragment, leaving isolated groups fighting for basic resources. The planet itself would slowly settle into a new equilibrium, with oceans stabilizing at the poles and weather patterns forming strange, extreme cycles. For the few who survived the initial months, life would be a constant battle against a hostile environment. Ultimately, if the Earth stopped rotating, the story of humanity would be one of desperation. Minute by minute, hour by hour, humans would push their bodies and minds to the limit, adapting where possible, but often succumbing to the forces of nature we once took for granted. The planet would remain, slowly reshaped and forever changed, but the human presence would be drastically reduced. Survival wouldn't be heroic, it would be a brutal, relentless struggle, with only the most resilient or lucky individuals enduring in a world that no longer follows the rules we know. If the Earth stopped rotating, survival wouldn't be impossible, but it would demand strategies that push the limits of what humans can realistically endure. In the immediate chaos, the first priority would be shelter. Buildings and cities might crumble under winds and floods, so natural shelters like caves or deep underground bunkers would offer the best protection. Subterranean environments shield from both extreme heat and freezing cold, and they provide a stable atmosphere away from the violent storms reshaping the surface. Protective clothing would become essential. On the sunlit side, heat-resistant suits with built-in hydration systems could prevent deadly sunburn and dehydration. On the dark side, Insulated clothing and portable heating sources would be required to avoid hypothermia. Even then, exposure would need to be carefully limited. Hours outside could be fatal, no matter how prepared. Air filtration systems would also be critical, as the atmosphere would carry dust, debris, and potentially toxic gases from fires or decaying organic matter. Food and water would be a constant challenge. Traditional agriculture would collapse under permanent sunlight or darkness, and soil would dry or freeze. Hydroponic systems indoors could offer a lifeline, growing crops under artificial light and controlled temperature. Rainwater collection might work near equatorial regions that still receive some precipitation, but it would be limited. Any survival plan would have to combine scavenging with high-tech solutions to sustain nutrition over months and years. Energy would be another limiting factor. Solar power could work only on the sun-facing side, and nuclear or geothermal energy might become the most reliable sources to maintain shelters, heating, water purification, and artificial agriculture. Communities would need to be small, mobile, or self-sufficient because large populations would struggle to survive in one location. Realistically, some strategies simply wouldn't work. Moving across the surface in search of resources would be extremely dangerous, as floods, extreme winds, and temperature swings would make travel lethal. Attempting to live on the open equator would be impossible, with scorching heat by day and freezing nights in some areas. Even the strongest technology couldn't fully neutralize the relentless environmental extremes. Over time, humans might adapt in smaller, isolated ways. Underground or semi-subterranean settlements could become permanent settlements. Protective suits could evolve into advanced, self-sustaining exoskeletons for surface exploration. Genetic or medical adaptations might be pursued to better handle radiation, heat, or cold. But the reality is clear. Survival would be a constant fight, limited to a fraction of the global population. In the end, the Earth would continue without its spin, and humans would be pushed to their limits. Some might survive in carefully planned shelters with technology supporting their basic needs, but the majority of civilization as we know it would disappear. The planet would remain, slowly reshaped, while humanity would endure only in fragments, adapted, cautious, and forever aware that the world has changed in ways that no one can fully control. If the Earth stopped rotating, the reality is harsh. Most of the planet would become uninhabitable, with extreme heat on one side and freezing darkness on the other. Violent winds, flooding, and collapsing ecosystems would wipe out cities and communities. Human survival would be limited to a few carefully planned shelters, relying on technology, underground habitats, and controlled food and water systems. Even then, life would be a constant struggle, with no room for error. Civilization as we know it would be gone, replaced by small, isolated pockets of humanity. It's a stark reminder of how fragile our existence is and how much we depend on the delicate balance of nature. Something as fundamental as the planet's rotation shapes everything from the air we breathe to the day we live by. Losing that balance shows us just how intertwined we are with the forces of our world and how quickly life can be pushed to its limits. So the next time you watch a sunset or feel the breeze, think about the systems we take for granted. How resilient would we really be if the ground beneath us changed so drastically? If you found this scenario fascinating, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more explorations of extreme what-if scenarios.